Yo, Sunday yet again. The weeks just fly by. Let me get some sounds here first. Playing. I always find I can think better if I've got a guitar in my hands. It's like it distracts me in some way. I was thinking the other day that my tendency to be distracted by stimulus is like the RAM of a computer. It gets backed up by just things that are in your line of sight. And I think I've gotten past this sense of embarrassment that my immediate sensibilities are so easily distracted by pretty lights and sounds, and I've just tried to incorporate that into the process. And one of those things is like this: if I'm playing guitar while I'm speaking, then I feel like I can be freer when I speak. Without it, I become more tuned into the words that are coming out of my mouth, and I find myself second-guessing them. In a similar way, what I've realized about the writing of Powernerd this week and the week prior is all the best laid plans that I've had, that I've talked about during the course of this update series. When I allow myself to get into the frame of mind that facilitates writing, I recognize how few of those plans are of any practical value. You know, you may look up YouTube website series about songwriting or lyrics or the functions of a verse or anything like this in hopes that your lack of inspiration can be quelled by some sort of guideline. And then when I am actually deep in the writing of it, I realize that none of those things are of any real significance, because it's the intuition that guides you towards the things that are supposed to be done. One of the realizations that I had over the past week is that I've been hesitant to really engage in lyrics for the past while, I guess, and I think I've built up a sort of mental block under the assumption that writing lyrics is a technique or a style that is consistent throughout artists, and that my lack of inspiration lyrically stems from the fact that I don't know the technique, I don't know the process. But when I really got into it this week, I realized that my apprehension about the lyrical slant is more to do with the fact that I know now, by being present with it, that my technique for writing lyrics is just a pain in the ass. And so I think I procrastinate, not because I feel insecure about not knowing how to do it, but because I'm well aware that the process that brings out the lyrical aspects that are important to me require a lot of time. And so the way that I do that is I start by doing a mumble track, where I'll put down a verse and a chorus and a bridge and any additional sort of compositional aspects, that when I listen to it as an instrumental, it flows in a way that doesn't feel like any particular section is breaking that fourth wall or distracting me in some way. Once that's done, I'll set up my microphone and I just sort of mumble over top of it. And through that, it's the intent is to just say whatever is on my mind. And I'm shocked at how reticent I am to actually say things. It's like, I think it's either embarrassment or trepidation or something, even when it's a mumble track, even when it's something that no one's going to hear except for me. It's just there for me to be able to get a sense of what my intuitive first feeling is towards the arrangement. And then from there, if there's any lyrics that I stumble upon as I'm doing that mumble track that seem compelling, it can be just a phrase or a word even, or I know instinctively that a certain part of the song, there should be like a hard consonant on that particular downbeat or whatever. I'll include those, but it's just sort of gibberish. And when I find a piece that seems to be compelling enough to say, okay, this is worth pursuing, on my desktop I'll have Pro Tools open, and then beside it I'll have my notepad, and then I'll just track that mumble track, and then I listen back to it, and then I have it low enough in the mix and with echo on it so that it's kind of unintelligible. And then when I'm listening back, what I think I hear, I will type into the notepad, and then I've got like a sort of real basic template of what that first take mumble track seems to imply. And then from there, the important thing with Powernerd, not all records, but for Powernerd, is for me, once that's done, to write beside the title on the top of the song in 1 to 3 words what the song is about. You know, the song is about loss. The song is about. Now that's hard to do because you want to just use all these words. You want to explain it in some overly elaborate way, like, oh, this is a song about how over time relationships change and maybe you didn't actually know each other, or something like that. But to be able to really figure out how to define the content of a song in 1 or 2 real succinct words allows the flow of the lyrical content to become more clear. And there's a lot of thoughts about, well, how do lyrics work? How are the, what's the intent? So the chorus should be like this, and the verse sets up the chorus and the pre-chorus, you know, all these sort of rules that go along with it. But when I'm in the throes of it, when I'm actually allowing myself to sort of be in the flow of writing, it's less about an intellectual process and more about doing it over and over again. And I don't know how it works with other people. Maybe they write it all down first and then they refine it over time, and you know, they have a certain way of rhyming. But for me, I do it and I listen to it and then I edit it, and then as I'm listening to it, I'm like, oh, that word shouldn't be it should be so, and then I'll punch in for that, and then I'll edit that, and then I'll listen through it again and be like, oh, this chorus doesn't actually, I don't remember it. And as a result of not remembering it, I'll try another chorus and I'll make a new playlist and then I'll do another chorus and do the same thing. I'll edit it and change a word here and there, and then maybe I'll go back to the other one, and then maybe I'll take half of one and make it half of the other. And I usually leave the verses blank while I'm writing, because the verses, it's not necessarily that they're the hardest part, but I think for the sake of Powernerd, what I'm trying to do is really get the flow, so that when the chorus strikes, its impact is really significant. And in order to do that, what I've attempted to do this time is just have one voice on the verse and maybe 2 voices, mine, you know, double myself for the pre-chorus, and then make the chorus with harmonies and synths or whatever. And so I leave the verses out, so as I'm listening through to the arrangement, the right melody is the one that every time I hear it, it starts coming back to me. And then by the time I'm either compelled or forced by a deadline to commit, it's almost like those lyrics have evolved on their own accord. I will say that Powernerd, so I start tracking the drums in 3 days. So I've got 3 days to finish the writing. I've never written an album this fast. It's one of you know, like Moth and Axolotl and Ruby Quaker and all these projects that I'm doing. It's one of those. but its function came to the forefront much more overtly and quicker than I anticipated, in that it will be the first one that I put out. And it's the simplest, for sure. And I would say that the frantic nature of why it needs to be done as quick as it has been has a lot to do with what goes into making the moth, what goes into time management of certain players' availability, certain studios' availability, certain financial concerns. So it made sense for this one to be done first. So all my focus is on that until the 10th of May. And although it's been the fastest record since Punky Brewster, I guess, that I've written, what that provided, half by circumstance and half by design, is the inability to second guess it. And so much of the work that I've done for the past decade or more, I've had the opportunity to really second guess it, maybe overthink it. You know, maybe as opposed to a certain mistake happening on the guitar that created this evocative sound, I would say, oh, that's not enough. I need to take that sound and then deconstruct it and then recreate it with a bunch of synths to sort of represent what it is that I perceive that mistake to have been doing. And I realize that with Powernerd, with the fact that I don't have the time to do that, what may have been missing over the course of the past decade has been the fact that sometimes it's enough. You know, you don't need, it's like those first improvised moments that I guess I've sort of trained myself over the past while to assume as, well, that's clearly a placeholder. That clearly isn't, you know, album quality. Now that I've been doing Powernerd in a different way than I have with any of the other records, I realize, oh wow, the effect that achieves is actually more significant sometimes when it's not orchestrated. Of course, the nature of the work that I do and the nature of Powernerd and everything else that I do is, you know, it's arguably pretty over the top, to say the least. But it didn't change that to not overthink every aspect of it. So if you're getting microscopic with everything that you do, it's easy to get lost in the details in a weird way and maybe lose sight of what the intent of it is. So again, with the lyrics being able to define right beside the name of the song, this song is about X, this song is about death, love, whatever, children, whatever. There's a directness to that the deadlines that have been imposed on this project by myself and others, I think will actually define the characteristics of its emotional impact. There's a degree of momentum and not franticness, but assertive use of one's time and resources that I don't think I absolutely could not have achieved had I had time to do this like a normal record. Little things like, someone said, well, what's the artwork? And I'm like, oh, it's a bunch of mountains and it's like this and it's gray and it's like all gray, but the font is kind of like an off sort of beigeish, brownish gray, and it's got to have this implication of scale and grandeur, and it has to be simple. It can't be like a story. It has to be evocative based on the bluntness of the emotional intent represented by mountains in the rain and mist and everything. And it's almost like there's a melancholy to it, but it's also juxtaposed by the awareness that when the chips are down, I can do it. And that's something that I guess I feel over the course of the past couple of years the recognition that that exists in my creative process is worth celebrating. So Powernerd ends up becoming an affirmation of the perception of grace under pressure in a way. And as a result, I've learned so much over the past 2 weeks from having done it, because there was a part of me, I guess, it was just like, oh, I don't think I can do this. But then when I was really in it, I was like, you know you can do this. You've always known you can do this. And when there's no time to second guess it, it becomes clear how much of that dialogue that I end up saying to myself during these moments of doubt are just, you know, it's beyond self-deprecation. It's more a barrier that you put up for yourself for, you know, whatever reason. Maybe you don't want to admit that you're capable. Maybe there's a certain amount of the recognition of your own potential that is rooted in a perception of arrogance, and you don't want to be arrogant. I mean, it's like, how many times have you been privy with somebody who's good at what they do and then espouses their virtues in such a way that you think, oh, it's fucking awful. Like, and so maybe there's this sense of you are self-deprecating because you don't want to appear to be like that. But I think what Powernerd has been showing me is that there's a difference. It's a slight distinction, but one nonetheless, between arrogance and confidence. And again, I would just say about this particular period in this last week, I don't know if I would have been able to have drawn that conclusion had this deadline not been imposed. It's been such a frantic work schedule, though, that I haven't had a chance to listen to it in order. And so I think that I've got all the dynamic aspects that will make this emotional impact what it needs to be. But there's a part of me that feels like I'm missing one song, and I think I'm going to write that Monday. So the drummer gets into Vancouver Monday night. And I've got 4 more songs to complete before then, which today and tomorrow, that's 2 per day, and that's doable because I've cleared the schedule. But that one more, and I think it's up-tempo. I think it needs to be more up-tempo. But in which way, I'm not sure, because the melodic ideas that I have remaining that I haven't explored in terms of a structure are very melancholy, and the combination of up-tempo and melancholy is typically sits odd with me, but I have enough of the sort of mid-tempo smashers, right? So in lieu of new melodic ideas, which I don't know if I've got the creative capacity to create right now without them being contrived, mining the depths of that remaining conceptual riff library. I don't want to spin my wheels. I don't want to spend Monday spinning my wheels with it. So my fingers are crossed that, well, it's not even crossed. It's going to be what it is. And if there's anything this last week has shown me, and I'll leave you with this, it's, again, one more time, best laid plans don't really mean shit. If you are willing to commit to the creative ideas and the conceptual ideas, and if you're able to define them, that's almost the most important thing, through aesthetics or through you know, a lyrical guideline and a cliff note of concepts, then it's about just letting it rip. And just, your work goes into carving out the space in your life to make room for the frames of mind that are integral to allowing yourself to get into that flow. So I have 3 more days. By the time I see you next week, drums for Powernerd will be tracked, as will the guitar and bass. It's been fun, man. Then I get back to the Moth. And then after Moth, I get back to Axolotl. We started filming Ruby Quaker last week. It's awesome. I'll let you go. I don't want to talk too much. Great talking to you. Good luck with your work. Good luck with your projects. I'm sure many of you out there are going through similar things. Don't forget that we're very fortunate to be able to do this. I think it's easy in the moments where things aren't as rosy to forget just how fortunate we are to do this. So don't forget, and I won't either. See you next week.